Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Kubey Knives KU331. This is a budget knife, not an expensive knife at all, and it's honestly pretty impressive. I'm going to link it right down below so you guys can get there quickly if you want to check it out, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks so much to Kubey for sending this knife in. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much to my generous patrons for supporting me. There's a link for Patreon right down below, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. This is going to be a fairly quick review because this is a fairly straightforward knife, but it is interesting, so I want to give you guys the details. Overall length is coming in at about 7 3/4 inches overall. Blade length is coming in at about, depends on where you measure it, 3.5 inches down here, 3.25 inches up here at the peak of the G10. Your cutting edge, thanks to, I don't know if I want to call that a forward choil, but okay, a little more than 3 inches. Let's do a couple of size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat Model 2. Give you a good idea there, kind of right in between. How about up against the Spyderco Para 3? Still a little bit larger than the Spyderco Para 3. And last but not least, we'll go ahead and do the Benchmade Bug Out. Very similar in overall length, except this guy's got a little more presence. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So kick this guy down. It's got a nice action. We'll talk about that here in just a sec. Thickness, a little tiny bit thicker than the Spyderco Para 3. We've got steel and G10 layered, not countersunk with the steel liners. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. Lengthwise, it is definitely longer than the Para 3. Not quite as long as the PM2. Your height, honestly, it's probably tallest back here at the butt end, right? That's where it's the thickest. Yeah, not quite as tall, right? So really just length and a little bit of thickness. Double C, gonna be the parts that you're gonna be dealing with, but not that big of a deal. Depends on what type of pants you're wearing. Let's go ahead and weigh it. What are we working with materials? We have G10, we have skeletonized steel liners, you can see there on the inside, and then a nice D2 blade. So, weight, I'm gonna guess 4.5 ounces. At 4 ounces, okay, not bad. Some people are going to say that's too heavy. Again, it just depends on what your preferences are. Do with this information what you will. This is a knife that I personally would not shy away from carrying. Let's go ahead and get a hardware check on this guy. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the description in the section that talks about my tools. The pivot is a T8. Oh my goodness. Hallelujah. The body screws are T8. Thank you, Kubey. Excuse me. Pocket clip screws are going to be T6. I'm not going to check those. But yeah, minimal hardware, and it's all T8. That's real nice. I appreciate it. That's going to be real easy to take apart. So yeah, still, you want quality tools when you're doing that. You should be good to go. Let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness on this guy. I'm going to guess that's probably it's almost like the knife industry standard of 120 thousandths. That seems to be the most popular blade stock thickness. Almost right on the money. 120 thousandths. So there you go. All right, let's go ahead and talk about this guy. So this is a front flipper. It's like I usually say, I like front flippers. I think they're cool. And the more you use them, the more you adapt to them. That's pretty much the case with anything. But I like there to be a secondary means of deployment. Why? Because there was a time where I had a front flipper in my pocket. Excuse me. Jeez. You have sand and pine cones for breakfast, and all of a sudden you can't talk. Anyways, no, I had oatmeal. But I was carrying a front flipper, and it was a dedicated front flipper, and I was wearing gloves, and I was just having the hardest time, right? So the nice thing is we have this nice large open slot here. I really, really like these when it's this big elongated area where you can get your finger in, and oh boy, the comments that are going to come after that dialogue. But you can get in there and you can deploy it, right? You can get in there and make things work. But that's nice, right? It works. This area up here works as a front flipper real well. It's nice and snappy. Get that bam, right? But your reverse flick or your forward thumb flick, those work just fine. Or you can simply wheel it out like a regular person who's not, trying to put on a show. It's a liner lock, so there's nothing exposed over here for you to put too much pressure on, so you can kind of deploy it how you want. This is real easy to get out and just get the blade out and use it, right? And then put it away. The action on it is also really nice. And this is, if you're not familiar with Kubey, they're kind of an underrated brand. I think very specifically, they're lesser, they're less expensive stuff. Kubey's less expensive stuff is really, really good. And I think it goes overlooked. In fact, I think it kind of goes, as popular as it is, I think it still goes massively overlooked when we're comparing to some of the leading budget companies right now, right? This is no exception. The action on this is really, really nice considering what it costs. What does it cost? I'll go ahead and tell you right now. Depending on which version of it you're looking at, what colors, right? I'll link it down below. They're anywhere from $42 to about $48, so let's say $45. The action is really, really good. There's no opportunity for double clutch, really. But this little area right here that's basically an enlarged sharpening choil falls right down on your finger, so you can stop it without, having to run the blade on your fingernail. And then you can turn it and just wiggle it shut, which is great. Really nice. Ergonomically, not a hand melter. We have this big open area. They leave nothing, they leave it all up for interpretation, right? Put your hands wherever you want. It's just a sort of a curved, it's a rectangle with a chunk cut out of it, right? So yeah, you can lock in. I would not recommend using it. This is just a large sharpening choil. Like you can get one knuckle in there, but it doesn't feel super safe. So I would hold it like this. Now, the pocket clip is, that is a gooseneck if I've ever seen one. Why do companies do this? This is crazy, right? You're not gonna feel it if you're wearing gloves, but yeah, I mean, it's the lines of the knife are all right. They'll lock you in. These areas are nicely knocked down, so there's nothing really digging into your hands except for that pocket clip. It needs to be shorter. It needs to drop from here and swoop up slightly. Not like this, like it's too much, right? It just, this looks like the angriest goose, right? The king of the angry geese colony just honking aggressively in your face. It's too much. We don't need pocket clips like that, but it'll work. The blade in this case is a black washed sort of, it's like a tumbled, kind of looks like a DLC. I don't believe that it is, but you have options for a satin finished blade as well. I think the blade is very handsome the way that they've done this. They have a nice swedge up here. There's a flat that carries out just slightly past this opening hole. By the way, the inside of this has been chamfered. The edges of the inside of the hole have been chamfered, so you don't have to shave your fingernails off every time you do that. Same with up here. This is all nicely knocked down. I really like that. The edge is done super well. This is a nice, I mean, on a budget knife, like I'll give a little bit of a pass if you've got some kind of wonkiness in the edge, but now this is great. The final cutting bevel is really nice. It's plenty sharp. It has a nice, you can see how it tapers. Really good. This blade's definitely going to be a performer, but it's also not ground in a way that I would call, I would say, oh, it's weak, it's delicate, nothing like that. So I think this is really fantastic. I don't have an issue with the blade at all. I think that's going to work really well. There's nothing in the cutting path, and you can get fairly, close to, you're still quite a ways, like half an inch from right here. If you want to choke up, you can, but I just wouldn't recommend it. But yeah, like if you hold it like this, you can definitely get somewhat close to the edge and put a lot of pressure into that cut and still be locked in pretty well. Hardware, I like how Kubey puts their logo on the pivot. That's great. I don't like seeing the logo on the blade and the pivot. Like we know, like we have your logo here, we don't need it here, right? On the other side, fortunately, it just says D2. But, okay, it's not really hurting anything. Like I said, nice, the hardware's a T8 head size, so that's great. There's a lanyard hole for lanyard people. The pocket clip looks a little bit, it always looks a little funny when they mount it like this and it's diagonal, but I understand that that's beneficial for Kent, how we call that, the angle or the carry angle, I don't know. But the position of the pocket clip, or the depth of the pocket clip is good, and you can mount it. Left-handed people can also enjoy this knife, even though it is a right-handed liner lock. It's real easy. I mean, I'm right-handed, and I have no problem manipulating this knife. Liner locks, I think, are the least difficult to deal with for people who are, their dominant hand is opposite of how the knife is made, right? So, not that big of a deal. There's a couple of standoffs back here. Lipped liners probably would have been better if we had countersunk the liners, so the whole thing could be a little bit thinner and a little bit lighter, but they didn't do that, so okay. Lockup on this guy is coming in at about 35%, something like that. No blade play, up, down, left, or right. Where's the stop pin? Way in there, way inside there. Tons of shouldering, wrapping all the way around that guy. Do we have pivot lash? No, we have... If a company like Kubey can make a $45 knife with 0 pivot lash, why does pivot lash exist? And I understand, listen, pivot lash is when the barrel was milled, or machined slightly smaller than the hole in the blade. So there's a little bit of play. It's just kind of like a quality control check. It won't actually affect it in the lockout position or in the closed position unless it's really bad. The worst that I've ever felt is just a tiny click. But I have definitely felt pivot lash on knives that cost more than $500, which is like, wow, yikes, shouldn't be the case. Everything should be machined perfectly, especially when we can get it right at $50. Anyways, no detent lash, no pivot lash, no lockout, wiggle, anything like that. This is pretty straightforward, pretty good. It's a bigger knife. It's not huge. It's a larger knife. I really wish that they had slimmed up the scales and countersunk those liners. I also wish they had just gone ahead and given us a real forward choil. Like, if you're going to tease us with this little, thing, like, just give us give me another 1/4 inch and give me a real forward choil. What is this, right? Crazy. Either do it or don't do it at all. Like, this whole area could have just been blade and we would have been happy, though this corner up here would have been in the way. They could have shaved that down, though. Anyways, this is another D2 and G10 liner lock. It's got a couple of little fancy elements, right? The opening slot, and it's got the front flipper. There's a million other knives out there like this, and a bunch of them are good. So this knife has a lot of competition. But this is another generally recommendable budget knife. It's a good knife. Kubey is doing a good job with budget knives. They do an okay job with some of their more expensive stuff, but, if I want a good budget knife, or if somebody's asking me, hey, what are some companies to check out for knives that cost around $50 or a little less than $50? Kubey, they're doing a good job. This is a good knife. Definitely recommendable knife. So it's going to go in 2 playlists, my recommended knives playlist, and it's going to go in my cheap knives I like playlist. If you're looking for inexpensive knives for whatever reason, you or somebody else, somebody you love, a friend, right? Yeah, this is a good knife. Check it out. Thanks again to Kubey for sending this in for me to take a look at. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.